Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 203 of James Bond Radio. My name is Chris Wright, and with me is my brother from another mother, Mr. Tom Sears. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm good, man. I've thoroughly enjoyed these listener chats over the last few weeks. It's always nice to, get stuck in with the JBR family and learn about some other fans and their sort of, their thoughts on Bond and their feelings. And I do like the new controversial, unpopular opinion question that we're throwing into the quickfires.
I think that could be my favourite now.
It is a conversation starter, that one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's I believe one is going to come up today, which is going to bring some tears to the eyes of certain Bond fans. That is going to come up in one of the interviews, and it may or may not involve me as well. So I'm a little bit nervous about letting that one out of the bag. Ooh. But we shall cross that bridge when we come to it. What about you, man? Have you enjoyed yourself over the last few weeks?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's obviously we've had a little break and coming back stronger, which we've always looking forward to. And the listener episodes have been a lot of fun. And I think I know quite a few people try every year to get on the show, and it's difficult because obviously there's so many people put their names in. But there's some of our listeners from these recent episodes have said they've been listening since the start, pretty much, which is really nice to hear. And anyone who didn't get on this year, just keep trying because there's always next year.
Absolutely, indeed there is. So today we are joined by Mr. Craig Laurenson. And we are joined by my fellow Isle of Wight compadre, Nick Grandvoinet. So we're going to get chatting to those boys in a little bit. Now, next week, this is going to be the end of our sort of run of birthday interview episodes. But next week, JW is taking over, and he is going to be doing the anniversary episodes for the music of Bond. So there's going to be 3 listeners joining John over there, and they're going to be talking the music of Bond next week. So that's a lot to look forward to. And then following that, there's going to be some great programming coming up, including you're going to be doing your Watches of Bond Part 2 with Brian, aren't you?
Yeah, that's coming up. Yeah, I think Dan, Agent Dan Gale, and I are going to do the old Bond 25-day challenge, which we didn't get to do last time. I know. Was it? Did you? Who did you?
It was
you
me and Brian.
You and Brian. That's right. Yeah. And it was great. I love listening to that episode, and it's. There's always some interesting cobwebs that even come out of your own closet, Tom. Well, I think when you do that, there are the answers that you know without even looking. Yeah. And then there are one or two that you have to think a bit, and you might even surprise yourself. So I'm looking forward to recording that one. Should be fun.
Absolutely. It should be a lot of fun. So without any further ado then, let's talk to our first guest of the day, Mr. Craig Laurenson.
My name's Bond. James Bond. Bond.
James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British end up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Lucy, as you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down 007.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to lie.
Welcome to our next guest on the show, Mr. Craig Laurenson. How are you doing, Craig?
Hello, chaps. Very nice to see you both. I'm delighted to be here. Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, man. Where are you calling from today?
So I'm actually up in sunny Glasgow. The sun is out here today, which makes a change. I'm originally from the Shetland Isles. You might guess by accent, so a wee bit kind of... It's Scottish, I'm sure you can tell, but yeah, a bit all over the place. But yeah, originally from the Shetland Isles, way up off the top of Scotland. But yeah, I've been in Glasgow for the past sort of decade or so.
So did you move from the Shetland Isles to Glasgow?
Yeah, I did. Originally went for university to begin with and enjoyed city life. So
what's it like living on sort of remote islands? Is it a bit like Bond villain locations?
Yeah.
Or...
Sorry, guys, 2 seconds.
Oh, that's all right.
Cut off.
No worries.
Let me see if it's my... Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you. Camera's
good
off,
at our
we
end.
can still hear you.
Maybe my AirPods have just cut off.
Ah, okay.
Right, is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Yeah.
If it goes off again, I'll switch. I've got normal headphones here as well, so I'll switch back to them if it goes funny.
Okay.
All right, sweet.
Right,
sorry, go for that again.
Cool. So you just asked,
Go from. Oh yeah.
are you like Scaramanga living on the Shetlands? So yeah, re-ask that question then, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. So on the Shetland Islands, a bit like a Bond villain location. What is it like, sort of living up there?
Yeah, it's quite surreal, I suppose. It's quite a small community. It's that kind of very much a, what's the word, like a quiet country life. You're quite sheltered in a way. I think once I ventured down to the big bad city, you think, oh gosh, this is quite. There's an actual world out there. So there's not a lot to do. A lot of nice scenery, that kind of thing. But in terms of the day to day, it's quite mundane. I think that's why I've kind of stuck out city life, to be honest, rather than the old.
Mate, you know what you've just done. You've described my life growing up on the Isle of Wight. We're at opposite ends of the country on a little boring island.
There you go. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah,
man.
I was aware you were an Isle of Wight boy. I was thinking there was a nice connection there. Yeah, it's very. You'll understand that, Tom, especially then. It's 100%. That kind of the island community life versus the big bad city life. Exactly. I have to say, maybe I'll end up back in Shetland again, sort of retirement age. But right now, I'm quite happy in the city, kind of in the heart of it all.
Absolutely. Nice. Cool stuff.
So you've got some pretty amazing stuff behind you there. Some nice Bond paraphernalia.
I do.
Yeah. Have a little chat through. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I don't usually. This isn't usually out on display. I thought I better make an effort for you boys today. So up top there, we've got that's the James Bond stamps. You might have seen them, but Royal Mail put out last year. So nice wee sort of framed set of them. I've got just behind my shoulder, obviously, the Bond 50 Blu-ray box set, my kind of go-to. As I'm sure it is for many Bond fans. These two, it's obviously Sean and Roger. That's the Big Chief Studios figures. I do have the other ones as well. There's Baron Samedi and Solitaire, and there's Goldfinger himself and Oddjob. I need to get a nice display cabinet for them, so they're usually boxed up, to be honest. But I thought I better stick out the old Bonds there. And there's a signed photo of Sir Roger Moore as well. Met him in 2016 at one of those kind of evening with Roger Moore events. So yeah, that was beautiful, because it was less than a year before he died. So I'm that kind of way. I'd just come back from traveling at the time, had very little money. It was bloody expensive, but I thought it can't turn down the chance to meet Bond when he was coming to Glasgow as well. I thought, this once in a lifetime event, and thankfully I did, because sadly a year later he was no longer with us. So yeah, I'm grateful I had the opportunity to meet him when I did.
Absolutely, man. Those Big Chief Studios figures are great, aren't they, man? I got the Live and Let Die set, but like you, man, I haven't really got a good way to display them, so they've just stayed in their box for now. But,
that's the same as me. I mean, they're expensive, but they are worth it. When you actually get them in your hand, they're beautiful. They're really, really nice. Solitaire, especially, she's really nice. I should have had her sat out with her card and sat at our table, but they're really good. And I think it's Dr. No's the next one's coming out. There's Sean Connery and Dr. No himself, but I've got them on pre-order. So hoping they'll continue that for a while to come, because I'll be a sucker for them.
Absolutely, mate.
Are the boxes kept sort of still on display, but in boxes, or are they kept in a cupboard and locked away until
at the moment? I've got them in a cupboard. The boxes, when they're actually in the box, they're kind of it's not the nicest look when it's in the box. They're kind of all they're kind of packaged up, and
it's like Toy Story, isn't it? It's like Toy Story. You got all these little model Bond figures. Are like, when are you going to let us out? They're probably trying to bash on the box to get out to battle each other.
I'd say probably once every 2 or 3 months, I do go and just have a wee nosy in them again, make sure they're doing all right. I don't want them to get lonely in there.
Very nice indeed. Right then, dude, we've got 10 quickfire questions for you. Are you ready?
Yes, hit me, Tom.
All right, let's do it. Craig Laurenson, question number 1. What is your favourite Bond film?
Oh, right. Whenever I get asked this, there's two that kind of jostle for the position, and I think I'll answer both of them, because any given one day it's one or the other. And I'm a Bond fan that I embrace the kind of the real thriller ones, but your early Sean ones, and I also equally embrace the kind of what would you say, the sort of fantastical, the high camp and humour of kind of the middle of Roger's era. So my favourite 2 films are Dr. No, and as you might see from the T-shirt, A View to a Kill.
Hey! I didn't notice that T-shirt actually. I just noticed Roger's little head there popping up. Beautiful stuff. That is quite the combination, Craig. I'm quite impressed with that.
We've not had that before, have we, Tommy?
That's like almost two opposite ends of the spectrum, isn't it? So give us.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly kind of what sums it up. Because I don't really have one preference over the other in terms of I love that kind of a real spy, hard-nosed thriller stuff that kind of Tim Dalton and kind of Sean's early ones are really famous for. But I equally love. I'm a huge Roger fan, and I think I love your silly Moonraker nonsense, if you want nonsense for want of a better word. But Dr. No, first of all, I love how it as a first film to a series, it really, there was no precedent there. I think it did such a good job of setting that precedent of what was to come, and really having, I think what Sean and Terence Young, the director, did on that first film was just mold such a well-rounded character. I think he just really embodied Bond perfectly in those his early 3 or 4 films. He was brilliant, but I love Dr. No. It holds a special place in my heart. Just I think the locations are fantastic. I love the music. I love that kind of the kind of a calypso free blind mice. Your jump up, you're underneath the mango tree. I smile every time when I think about music like that. I love Dr. No himself. I think he's a great villain. I love the fact you don't see him for so much of the film, and when you do begin to get little glimpses of him, it's quite, it takes a while before you actually reveal who he is. I love all of that. I love the what Ken Adam did with the sets, that fantastic, the circular on Crab Key Island. But I love that. It's an amazing set. Ursula Andress, she's fantastic. Honey Rider, you can't beat that coming out of the beach scene. I think it's really brilliant. And then the flip side of that, A View to a Kill, it tends to get its a fair. Do you know what I mean? It's not the highest rated.
It takes a pasting, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does. And I understand that, but for me, I love everything about it. I love the kind of the plot. I really enjoy. I think Max Doran is fantastic. I love Mayday. I know she can be a bit of a hit or miss for people. I think she's brilliant. I really love her. And I actually really like Stacey Sutton. She tends to rank quite poorly amongst the Bond girls.
She gets a lot of flack as well, doesn't she?
She does. I certainly don't mind her. I think she does a solid enough job. And the locations as well. There's something about that. The Eiffel Tower jump is just fantastic. I love the Eiffel Tower anyway. I think it was great to see Bond go to some really iconic locations, and the Golden Gate Bridge finale. Obviously, not a lot of it was actually filmed on the Golden Gate Bridge, but I've been to San Francisco when I was traveling America, and it was just amazing to go and see the Golden Gate Bridge. And that the finale to that film, I really enjoy. I love the final final act to that film. I enjoy in particular. I think it's a solid entry, and I think it gets a fair rollicking, but I don't think it deserves sometimes. I think it's up there as one. Well, it's my favorite Roger film and one of my favorites overall of the whole series. So yeah, two different ends of the spectrum there, and I think it's 2 solid entries for me.
Yeah, you know what, with A View to a Kill, it is a funny one, and I'm like you. I totally understand the people that don't like it, because he is older and stuff, and it's it is time to refresh it with a new fella. Like there's no escaping that. Yeah. But when you put it down and you list things like the Eiffel Tower jump and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of those sequences, and like you say, Walken and all that kind of stuff, and Mayday, there's a lot of great stuff to love in there, man. It really is. Cool. And it's,
and Sir Godfrey Tibbett, he's brilliant.
I love
the bit in the car wash. For me, that car wash was terrifying as a kid. Yeah. I mean, I've heard you talk about it on the James Bond radio before, but I never could go in a car wash again without imagining double checking in the back seat, make sure there's no one in there.
100%.
And I've not mentioned the music yet. I think the soundtrack, the theme song and the soundtrack, to be honest, of A View to a Kill is definitely up there as one of my favorites as well. I love A View to a Kill, the song. I think it's a really solid entry, and the theme song, the soundtrack as well is solid. I think that adds to it as well.
On that note, I completely agree. But on that note, Beach Boys, yes or no? What do you think?
I don't hate it. I could do without it, to be honest. But it kind of adds to me to that kind of that humor that his Rogers kind of later tenures well known for. Yeah. And I think it wouldn't be. I think it always makes me smile when it pops up. So I think keep it in. Cool. It always it brings a wee
Gidea Park, wasn't it? That's great. You know what, Craig? Because I don't think we've definitely not had a double barrel choice of Dr. No and A View to a Kill. I think Dr. No has had a lot of appreciation in recent years, I think, in the Bond fan community that's brought up, and rightly so, because it's amazing. We've said it before, Sean Connery, Lightning in a Bottle, fantastic. But View to a Kill does get overlooked, potentially due to Roger's age, I don't know. But it is a really, really strong film, and I agree with you. There's one or two sections I'm not keen on, but aside from perhaps the fire truck scene, which is the one for me which lets it down a little bit, but everything else is solid, really, really solid, and that's great. I love it. Never heard those two choices. That's brilliant.
Dr. No as well, and that I always think it gets slightly overlooked because obviously you're From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and Thunderball they always rank really high for people, and I always think Dr. No never quite, especially From Russia, it always plays second fiddle to that. And for me, I don't get me wrong, I love all of those early Sean films as well. I think they're fantastic. But Dr. No, it's just the locations, that just every little bit of it, just when you mesh it all together, for me, it just pips it for me, and I just really, really enjoy it.
It is a beauty. When you see, have you seen it on the big screen in recent years?
Yeah, I did. I used to work in a cinema briefly, actually, and we you could bring in, as a kind of a staff treat, you could bring in a film every now and again. Nice. So when it came to my turn, I picked Dr. No because I need to see this on the big screen. Come on.
Nice. Yeah, it's a beauty on the big screen, that one. There's something magical about that for sure.
Totally.
Definitely. Okay, and Craig, on to question 2. What would you say is your favourite Bond book?
Yeah, I would say, to be honest, I'm definitely more of a film Bond fan than a book fan. I've read all of Fleming's books. I've only ever read them once, and probably kind of starting from late teens to early 20s. So it's at least, it's coming on like 7-8 years since I've read my last Fleming book. But Casino Royale was probably my favourite book that I've read. It was not long after the film came out of Casino Royale, obviously, but I picked up I thought, I'll need to go back and discover the books, because I'd only ever been a film fan before then. And I really enjoyed them, don't get me wrong. Casino Royale was definitely my favourite book, and I really enjoyed the only continuation novels I've read are the Anthony Horowitz ones. Loved Forever in a Day as well, so that was definitely one that would rank quite highly for me in terms of the books. But I liked how the book, it was, because a lot of the books, the films pay no attention to what happened really in the film, in the books whatsoever, in the film, sorry. But I liked how it translated quite well into a film, because obviously at the time, and a lot of people thought it's unfilmable, as it was often said, but it came together really well into a film. But the book,
are you talking about the 67 version now, aren't you?
Oh yeah, of course, of course. So yeah, definitely, I would say film is definitely the higher of the two for me in terms of like books over films. But I enjoyed the books, and it's on my list. There's so much. I read a lot, and I keep meaning to go back and reread the Bond books again, because I feel I read them as I said, as a late teenager, early 20s. I feel I would appreciate them a lot, even more so now. So that I think I really should be getting back onto them, to be honest. I loved the Dr. No book as well. I remember really enjoying that at the time of reading. But I feel like I need to go and rediscover them again, to be honest.
There's a lot to rediscover. Like the last one I read was Dr. No, funnily enough. And because I tend to find, I go like, I'm going to go back and reread all the Fleming. So I start at the beginning, and then I get to roughly From Russia with Love or Dr. No, and then I get distracted by some other things, and then it ends there. So Dr. No was the last one I go back to, but there's the last time I read it through, there were so many things that I just either had forgotten about or had rediscovered or even sort of noticed for the first time. And there's that sequence in there when he's training with the gun, and there's this description of like a camera that he's shooting into and stuff, and it's basically like the description of the gun barrel from the beginning of the films. Yeah. And I'm like, I'd never made that connection before. And then there's a bit where he's chatting to Honey Rider later, and she tells him that when she wants to move to New York and become an escort, and Bond's like, well, that's probably, doesn't mean quite what you think it means and stuff like this. And there's all these things like when I read them at like 13 that they just wouldn't have really gone on my head. So cool. Yeah, man, well worth revisiting for sure. All right, then. Question number 3 is, who is your favorite actor to play Bond?
Oh, I find this a really tough one because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love them all. They've all got really strong points. We've not discussed Majesties. I'm a huge Majesties fan, and I think George Lazenby's very underrated. I really love his portrayal in that film. For a non-actor, I think he does a fantastic job. But I think I would have to, if I was really pushed to it, I would actually have to say Roger Moore. Nice. I think I love what Sean does. Timothy I love as well. I think he's fantastic. And obviously Daniel and Pierce. But there's something about Roger's fun performance that he brings to the role. He does that kind of mix of, he's very good at humour, and he brings a kind of, the charm I think he brings to it is fantastic. And the person behind the role, I just think Roger Moore as a person he was a really nice chap, and I think that really helps. And you that comes across when you watch the film, his films, I think, as well. And I think that really helps cement him as a kind of cut above for me, to be honest. I really love all of his films. There's not one that I really dislike out of his 7. Even that, obviously, I like A View to a Kill, that tends to get quite a pace thing. And I like The Man with the Golden Gun. That ranks quite highly for me. It tends to be one that doesn't do too well.
So let me ask you this then, because I often find when you struggle to say a favorite like that, it's like where's the one that you would watch the least then? Like in that run of 7 for Rog, like where's the low point for you?
It's actually, and I find this quite interesting because it was the last Roger film that I ever saw, and I held off watching it for ages because it was that way where I'd seen all the rest of them, and this was the one film I hadn't seen yet. And it was that way. It was like the diamond, like I didn't want to touch it for a while. And it was probably because I watched most of the Bond films. I remember watching them when I was from the age of about 9, 10, 11 up until sort of 14. I'd seen most of them at that point. And I held off watching, and it was For Your Eyes Only. And that's probably my least favorite of his, but I still really enjoy it. And I don't know if that's an element of the nostalgia of the other ones, really being just remembering them as a kid and really enjoying the Jaws, the kind of fantastical stories, the Moonraker, and I loved Live and Let Die. But I just always felt For Your Eyes Only it always felt to me like it was missing a slight something, and it was that way where they came from the kind of high fantasy of Moonraker, really taking it back down to a From Russia type thriller we were obviously going for. I just felt they slightly missed the mark with it. There's just not so much, it's not that memorable, and it's one that I wouldn't really turn to now. As if I was going to watch a Roger film, it's definitely the one that I wouldn't really turn to be honest. But I still really enjoy it. There's some great elements. I love when he kicks the car off the edge of the cliff, and obviously that was a contentious issue for Roger at the time of whether his Bond would do that or not. But I think it was important that his Bond did do that in that moment. Yeah. But it was just missing, I guess, missing a iconic villain. It was the Bond girl she was fine, Havelock. It was all fine. It just wasn't brilliant. And I think I don't know if I held off watching it, and because it was a bit later in life. I was not much later in life. I was probably about 16 or 17 when I finally watched it. But it's it just wasn't. It didn't live up to that hype, I guess. And maybe it hyped up too much in my head, thinking, it's this final Roger film that I've not seen yet, and it didn't quite live up to the expectation I hoped it would.
It must be interesting to be in that position where there's been a film that's been out for a while, a Bond film that you haven't seen, but and you're kind of holding on to that. Oh, this is going to be so good. This is going to be so good, and it must be so difficult to have a film that then reaches that sort of excitement level that you have for it. So, but yeah, no, that's a really interesting story. I like that. And the good thing about Roger as well is he's got 7 films, and I know everyone talks about the humor, which is great, and he does that. But if you look at his films, he covers a vast range of, he does dark as well as fantasy, and there is some realism in some of his films, but he tends to nail everything. I think for me, he's the actor that covers the widest range of emotion, of he can do the style, the charm, he can do the dangerous, he can do everything. And he's probably the only Bond where you see all of that across his films because he's had such, he's had the long tenure and he's had the material and he's able to actually do that. So yeah, Roger's brilliant.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Okay, what about this next one then, Craig? This is a good one. Question 4: who would you say is your favourite Bond girl? And as we normally say, you can have one which really gets the blood going and one that you think you'd like to settle down with. They could be one and the same.
Yeah, I mean, so many people answer the same with this, and I would have to go. She ranks so highly up there for me. Is Tracy? I think she's just fantastic. I think as an all-rounder Bond girl, I think you would struggle to top what she puts into that film. I think Diana Rigg's just fantastic. She just brings so much to that role. The film's great anyway, but I think if it hadn't been her in that role, it would have been, it wouldn't be the film it became. So she probably ranks really highly for me. An underrated one I always think is quite underrated is Cara Malove from The Living Daylights. I think she is often overlooked, and I think she does a solid performance in that film. I'm a big fan of that film anyway. I think it ranks really highly for me. She puts in a solid performance. There's moments in it where she's a bit, how would you describe it, like weak, I guess you would say. She kind of converts to stereotype a wee bit, I guess. But I think she does a solid performance, and I love Domino from Thunderball. I think
don't we all?
Exactly. I think you know what I'm hinting at there. She does a good solid turn in that film, and I like her a lot.
That's a good 3. You've made our man in Somerset, Dan Gale, smile with the mention of Cara there. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Question number 5 then, Craig, is what is your favourite Bond villain?
Oh, yeah, tricky one that. Do you know, obviously big fan of Max Zorin, think he's fantastic, big fan of Dr. No. I will answer that with Scaramanga. I just think Christopher Lee is fantastic. He's just... I'm just a huge fan of him. I just think that film, he brings that film so much higher, a peg or two for me. I quite enjoy it as a film anyway. I know it tends to be quite a poorly favoured Roger one, to be honest. I really enjoy it. I think it's a solid entry, but I just think he's fantastic. He's very much the kind of anti-Bond. He's very much like Bond, but obviously the evil equivalent. I just think he does a solid turn in that film. I think his dialogue's really strong. I think he's quite subtle with his acting in a way with it. I just think he brings a lot to that character, and I love Nick Mack as well. I think they make a good duo.
Certainly.
But there's loads of villains I really like. Max Zorin definitely would be up there as probably my number 2 to that as well.
Yeah, there's some excellent choices. I love Scaramanga, man. I recently got one of the Golden Gun replicas.
Yeah, saw that.
I had to wait for ages for it to arrive, and then when it finally arrived, I was like, "Oh man!" And every time I walk past it and look at it, it just makes me giggle like a little boy. It's so well made and so beautiful. But yeah, man, what a great villain Scaramanga is. I'm totally in the same boat with you, man. I don't understand the flack Man with Golden Gun gets, because there's so much to love in there, dude, and there's so much iconic stuff as well, like especially the locations and all that kind of stuff, and the gun itself, and Nick Nack's great, man. Yeah. And it's like I would say, if I was going to be a villain, going and setting up a base on a little island in Thailand, only allowing bikini clad ladies on your island, And having a midget butler is like, I mean, life does not get any better than that, does it, man? That's the best thing
exactly.
Ever. Yeah, there you go.
That's some good choices there. Again, Scaramanga, Zoran as well. Like Roger has some great villains, and those two are right up there as well.
Yeah, I think Roger has the best set of villains of all, to be honest. I mean, Sean has some great ones, obviously, your Goldfingers and your Red Grants, but just from Mr. Big to Scaramanga to, I just think he is a really, even the likes of Kamal Khan I enjoy. I think Octopus, I think he's a good, solid villain as well. I just think, and obviously Jaws is you can't get much more iconic henchman than that. I think, Roger definitely has his really good share of villains in his films.
Excellent. Right then, on to question number 6. Craig, what is your favourite Bond theme song?
My favourite theme song, I think, is Live and Let Die. There is just something so iconic about that song. I love it. I love when you just hear those really big bombastic notes, I just think you can't beat that. I just think it's lovely. I love the, what would you call it, like the reggae interlude halfway through. I just think there's something really, that always makes me smile. It's quite unexpected. I think when you first hear the song, you're like, oh, what's this kind of...
The change in tempo is great, isn't it?
Because it's unexpected when you first hear it. You're just like, oh, I wasn't expecting that.
You've got that high energy sort of bit, and you're pumped up, and then you're just kind of almost serenely brought down to this like sort of little reggae chilled section, and then suddenly it's coming, and then when it ran, the tempo comes again, it just picks you back up. It's really cleverly done, I think, the theme song.
I often think
it fits the opening credits so well as well. I love those opening credits, and I remember me as a kid being quite scared when it switches to the flaming skull. It's very visually appealing, and I just think I think Paul McCartney and Wings did a fantastic job on that. It's such a solid entry.
I always think if you hadn't heard Live and Let Die, and we're back in the 70s, the film's in production, and you went to Cubby and you said, listen, I've got this idea for a song. It starts out with a bit of piano, and then it segues into a bit of reggae, and then you've got some big strings. On paper, that sounds horrific, doesn't it? It's like that should never work. And all those sections are so different as well, aren't they? It's almost like 3 different songs pasted together, but it works in such an amazing way. And it just, I often say with that section with the strings is like, that's such a strong theme tune in itself. Just that bit, the instrumental part, that could almost be like a secondary Bond theme that runs through the whole series, couldn't it? But what a belter, man. Absolutely. Question number 7 then. What is your favourite Bond location? Now, you can say one that you've seen, you've actually been to, and then one that you would most like to visit.
Yeah, most like to visit, as many people would probably say, it would either have to be Peace Gloria or the James Bond Islands. I mean, I know these are answers that are churned out all the time, but I mean, there's a reason they are. They're just such iconic, beautiful locations. I think James Bond Island, especially, I've not had the pleasure of going to Thailand yet. But yeah, it just looks fantastic. And Peace Gloria, I mean, there's not much more of a iconic Bond location. And I think they're both amazing. I've not been to many Bond locations, I'll be honest. I travelled America in 2016, so went to San Fran and got to see the old City Hall, went on a View to a Kill, so that was a nice big
did you scale up the Golden Gate Bridge for a look?
Sadly not, no. It was I did wonder. I cycled across it and I thought, do I dare kind of stop the bike and jump up the old railings there?
There's never a taxi around when you need one. That's the trouble.
That's it. And obviously been to like the Eiffel Tower and things. So yeah, I guess there's View to a Kill is a lot of iconic locations like that. So and been to Vegas, so did my old drive around Vegas, kind of doing my best Diamonds Are Forever. Trying to nip down a wee alley into the tilt over. So that's, but Peace Gloria and James Bond Island, as I'm sure for most Bond fans, are top of the list as places to go.
Definitely
100%.
Solid choices. Okay, we've got 3 more questions for you, Craig. Question number 8 is, what is your favourite pre-title scene?
Ooh, pre-titles. I mean, there's a lot of really good ones, and I really liked Spectres. Actually, I loved that whole one camera. I thought that was a really solid start and entry to the to that. But I probably would say the Living Daylights. I think that whole it's I know it's ranked highly for a lot of people, but I just think that whole sequence in Gibraltar is fantastic. I really enjoy it. I think it's a brilliant entrance for Tim into the role. It really takes it back down to earth, I guess, and kind of reboots it for after my favorite film, but after the kind of the silliness of the end of Roger's films. I just think it works really solid as an entry. And probably second to that, I love the Spy Who Loves Me. I think that's I would rank highly for a lot of people, I guess, but I think that's just such a. I remember watching it for the first time. So much of Bond, I think, for me, is about nostalgia, and it's remembering that first time of seeing it as a kid. And obviously, I wasn't around in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but you remember when the first time you see the films, and I just remember that was such a visual spectacle. And because I didn't know as a kid what happened in these films, really, and it's just seeing that for the first time, I was like, oh, it's pretty special.
Yeah, man. Daylights is there's, like you say, there are so many good pre-titles for different reasons, and it's tough to beat Spy, man, with that iconic opening, but there is just something so magical about the Living Daylights pre-title sequence, and it wraps everything up in such a lovely bow where you get to see so many different little facets of Bondianness that it's just so wrapped up nicely. Like you've got the nice little stunt at the beginning with the skydive in the plane, and then you've got some sneaky Bond going on, and you've almost got that whole little adventure where that sort of mystery is unraveling of like what's going on here, and then you find out what's going on. You've got a great action sequence on top of the Jeep, and then just to wrap it up with like, who are you at the end? And it's just like, oh man, it's like you get some like Lover Man Bond at the end on the boat.
Totally.
The way he's lying there on the phone and just like, yeah, what a man. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I love when there's like it's like a little film in itself. I love when an opening sequence is like that. So I think it does it so well in that opening to Living Daylights. I love it.
And there's something about seeing the other double O's as well, and seeing them on a mission together. Like it's a training mission, but the 3 double O's. When do you see that? Never. And then obviously one of them, when the rope gets cut, and you see the fall, and we say it loads, but that head turn by Tim to introduce him, it's
magic. It's just Bond at its absolute pinnacle, isn't it? I love that. So good.
And of course, you get ear-rolled on your dead, which is always a bonus, which is nice. Question number 9 then, Craig. And this is a new one. What is your most controversial or unpopular Bond opinion? Oh,
great! Great question. And I kind of hope something like this would come up, because it's always such a. When I say this, people are always they don't like it. But for me, the most overrated Bond film. I wonder what you're going to say.
I'm nervous.
I can guess.
Do you want to guess?
I've got a guess.
What you think I'm going to say?
Okay. Does it begin with G?
It does begin with G.
I think I know what it might be. Is it one word?
Yes.
Is it Goldfinger?
No.
Is it GoldenEye?
GoldenEye. Oh, I knew it was one of those two. Yeah.
All right. Talk to me about this. I'll try.
Right.
I'll try and control myself.
I know it's like, because everyone loves GoldenEye, and I get it. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy the film. For me, and I like Pierce Brosnan, and everything about, because I grew up when I was a kid, Pierce Brosnan was the Bond, so everything kind of would suggest I should enjoy Pierce Brosnan films. Mm-hmm. But for me, I just don't. His films just don't reach the same pinnacle as the rest of the series for me.
So, quick question. So, what year were you born? When was
91?
91.
So
okay, right.
The first film I went to see in the cinema, ironically, was Die Another Day. So I am very much in the let's all hate Die Another Day. Yeah. I think if there's a film I could just burn and never watch again, that is definitely Die Another Day. But I just, GoldenEye for me, I watched it back last year. I don't know if you either saw it. Esquire did a 25th anniversary watch along with Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
Sometime last year. And
he didn't enjoy himself, did he, Pierce?
He was watching along and commenting on it. So I mean, it was nice to revisit the films. I haven't seen it for about 2 or 3 years. I just think it's dated quite a lot. Obviously, the other film, they're all dated in some way or another. I just think it's. I struggle to put it into words. I just don't enjoy it as much. I think it's a solid entry, and all of his films are, well, Dying of a Day except they're solid entries. I just don't find them particularly memorable. They're not ones I would reach to put on. If someone said, let's put on a Bond film, I would never pick a Pierce film.
Have you seen any of the first 3 on the big screen, or only his?
Only ever seen Dying of a Day in the cinema itself. Yeah, and that was because I kind of came to Bond at that. It was probably about when I was about 8, 9, 10, and that's the first one I remember coming out. And I was a big fan of Blue Peter as a kid, and that's how I first kind of got into Bond. Was they did a Blue Peter special talking about Bond, and I was like, oh, this is great. This sounds brilliant. This spy film. I thought this sounds really good. So let's kind of start checking these out, and obviously seeing like interviews with Pierce at the time. And I think he's a really solid Bond, and I just think his films let him down. I don't particularly. I do enjoy them, but I think The World Is Not Enough is my favourite Pierce film, which a lot of people don't particularly like. I think that's his most solid entry. Don't get me wrong, GoldenEye has a lot going for it, and I think Sean Bean is fantastic. I think he does a really good job, but yeah, it's just something missing for it. I would struggle to actually articulate what it is. It's just for something not as nostalgic, and it doesn't hit me in the same way. When I think of Bond, I don't see Pierce. I see Sean. I see Roger. I just don't.
Interesting.
It just doesn't quite click with me.
See, I do wonder, because like we often say, there's an age where Bond just gets you, and for me, like I always say a billion times on the podcast, GoldenEye. I just turned 13 when it came out, and that's when it really, lit the stick of dynamite for me. And I think a lot of people in sort of my age group, I think that had the same effect. It was such an important film for our age group because it came along just at that time, And for you to come in, so you're obviously a bit younger, you'd have been like 4 when it came out. So it is interesting to see the effect of that on different generations of what film is important to you. But then thinking about what films are most important to you, that there hasn't been that one. It's not like you saw Casino for the first time, for example, and like that was the one for you. So that's quite interesting, I think.
Because Pierce was obviously, he was my Bond when I came into Bond. He was still obviously Dying of a Day hadn't come out yet, but even obviously a couple of years after that, he was still the incumbent in the role. But he was just always missing something for me. When I was watching back, when I kind of discovered your Sean's, your Roger films, even George and Tim, they just ranked slightly higher than me in terms of, I don't know if it was because it was the modern day at the time. I quite like your old retro stuff. I've always been quite a nostalgic boy. I like looking back at sort of days gone by, so I wondered if it was something to do with kind of they were in the modern day that I was used to. But I love the Daniel films, which is fantastic. I think he's done such a good job with his 4 films. I know even Quantum gets a fair bit of stick. I love Quantum of Solace. I think his 4 have been really solid entries. I think he's done such a great job at rebooting the series at a time it was really needed after the diabolical Dying of a Day debacle. So I don't think it was even the modern day thing. They just missed the mark for me, and I think they'll always just be missing something for me, those films. I still enjoy them, but I just don't. They're definitely the part of Bond I could, if I had to do without a Bond and never see any of his films again, it would be Pierce for me.
You know what's interesting, Craig, is that for you to say that, you might think you're the only person that thinks that, but you're not, because the Bond fan community is so massive. No matter what people think as being an outside opinion, isn't solely theirs. Because I've spoken to people who think exactly as you do, and they put the Brosnan films, not Brosnan himself, but the Brosnan films down, and have the same idea of GoldenEye being a bit outdated and stuff. And I think when you're born, what you're brought up watching, it all has an influence, and it all has a factor on your overall opinions of Bond. But it's just, that's what makes it interesting, isn't it? Everyone has the different opinions, and there'll be people out there who aren't a fan of Sean or Daniel or Roger, and it's just everyone has the what they know. Everyone knows what they like and knows what isn't quite to that level, and that's what makes it really interesting. But I mean, it's fascinating stuff. I think is looking at that side of things as well. So yeah, fair play, good man.
Yeah, definitely. What I've really enjoyed about Discuss, because I'm relatively late to the old James Bond radio party. I really only discovered you guys during kind of the last year in lockdown. I'd never been much of a podcaster listener, to be honest, and obviously had a lot of free time once lockdown came along. The only thing we were allowed to go out and do was long walks and things. I thought I'll have to venture into the old podcast game, and thought, well, why not? I'm a huge Bond fan. Let's see what sort of Bond stuff is out there. So yeah, was very grateful to come across you guys. You kept me a lot of company in that time. But no, yeah, what I was meaning was how it's been nice to see how there's such a variety of opinions out there, and there's a Bond film for everyone. What might not suit you really suits someone else, and it's
even
really
Die
nice
Another
to hear.
Day.
Exactly, even Die Another Day. And it's nice to sort of hear that being discussed and hear like what similar opinions to you. As I say, like for a while I thought, oh God, everyone loves Pierce, and I'm just not the biggest fan, to be honest. But it's nice to hear that real mix of opinions and hear what people love about certain films that might be middle of a range for you. And I think that's the beauty of this podcast. So I can only say thanks to you guys for that.
We've still got one more question, and this one is an absolute beauty. Okay.
Oh God, here we go.
Question 10. If you had to name just one, what would you say is your favourite scene in the entire series?
Oh, favourite scene. God, that's a toughie. You stumped me there. There's so many iconic ones, isn't there? God.
It's tough. Very tough.
Tough one. Favourite scene. I would have to say, because it's iconic for so many reasons, but Ursula Andress coming out of the beach, out of the water into the beach in Dr. No. The location is stunning. I love the kind of lead up to it on the beach there with when Bond first arrives with what's his name, Coral. I think it's just, yeah, there's just something magical about that moment. Once you've seen it once, it's great, and then when you watch it back, you just know it's coming. And when she's singing away her song, he joins in with his questionable singing. There's just something really. Oh, it's just so, it's really basic, but it's back to basics Bond, and it's just that there's just something so it's innocent about it in a way. They were making something that they didn't realize would go on to become such an iconic film moment, let alone a Bond moment. I think everyone could, if you're asked to name a Bond scene, they would know exactly what you're talking about when you say Ursula Andress coming out of the water in the bikini. So for me, I think I have to put that up there as one of my favourite scenes of all time.
It's funny you say that about not realising what an iconic thing it was going to become in terms of a film series, but can you imagine being on set? Like, now we know, if you could go back in a time machine and stand there on set that day when he's at the casino table doing James Bond for the first time, and you see him do, I don't know, 10 takes of it or whatever, and then you see that's the one we all know, and just how spine tingling that moment would be. And then you go through the rest of the film, and there's so much in there. Like you see Honey coming out of the waves, and just what that is, and how that's one of the most iconic film moments ever. Like, Bond aside, out of all film, that is such an iconic
exactly
thing.
Yeah,
and like there it is, it's such a crazy thing, and they had no idea. Like, it was low budget movie at the time, and all that kind of stuff. They just had no idea what they had on their hands. And I often like to think back at things like that, even things like Indiana Jones and all those kinds of movies that have become these huge institutions. Right back at the beginning, when somebody sat down and like, right, let's knock up a script for this Dr. No, and like, let's just start writing the thing. And it's like they had no idea what they were making at the time. It's crazy, isn't it?
And I think that's one of the reasons I really love the film Dr. No. Is they had no idea what they were doing at that point. It was, as you say, it was so low budget they had no idea if it would be a success, if they would even do, you know what I mean, if another one, but let alone a series of 25 plus now. And yeah, and I never even mentioned the bit of the casino bit at the start. It's just fantastic. That's one of my favourite scenes of all time as well. And yeah, that's such a strong intro for Sean and the character. That's another reason I love the film so much.
100%.
It stands up really well, even against any film. And obviously, people say about the dated thing, but it still stands up. Dr. No, it's
definitely incredible. And I used to be terrified of that scene when Mary Trueblood gets killed at the beginning, when it's a quick camera cut to the villains and then they're screaming the music cue. That terrified me as a kid. And even now, when you watch it, you get that slight. You just go back to being a kid and remembering that moment. I just think there's so much in that film I just love.
Beautiful stuff. All right then, man.
Excellent.
Thank you for joining us today. That was a lot of fun. I enjoy hearing opinions that are different from my own, like the whole GoldenEye one. Like, even though I'm crying inside, I'm smiling outwardly, because it's nice to discuss things like that where you see different perspectives in Bond and all that kind of stuff. So thanks for joining us today, man. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for having me both. It was a pleasure. It was a delight to find out I've been chosen. And yeah, I'm relatively new to the JBR community, but I hope this is a start of a beautiful friendship. I hope to be listening for many years to come.
Well, for sure, man. And obviously, when lockdown eases, we'll have to get a couple of JBR meetups and get us along. We were going to do a Quantum of Scottish, as we called it, and plan to do all the Scottish locations, and that will be done, definitely. We don't know when yet, but that will be done. So
brilliant.
We'll let you know.
I'd very much
happens.
like to be involved. So yeah, give me a shout. I'm more than happy to jump along to a meeting or two. It'd be nice to actually meet people from the fan community. It'll be brilliant.
Absolutely.
Excellent stuff.
All right then, mate. Well, hopefully we will see you soon in the flesh. Until then, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Perfect. Thanks, chaps.
Cheers, Craig.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys. Bye-bye.
All right, that was a lot of fun talking to Craig there, a fellow British Isles man. Me down south on the Isle of Wight, growing up down there. Craig growing up in one of the Shetland Islands off the opposite end of the country. And there you go, kindred Bondian spirits, separated by the whole country. How about that, Chris?
That is poetic beauty, my
Isn't
friend. That is lovely. Yeah, it really is. It was a really good interview. I enjoyed that one. And I think, I really hope we get to do sort of a Scottish trip, do the whole Quantum of Scottish JBR trip. There's so many locations, like really, really great locations. Mm-hmm. And if Craig, is able to join us, that'd be fab. Yeah,
the two big ones up there that I want to see is obviously the Skyfall one. That's a big one in recent years, isn't it? And I would like, even though the stone has fallen down, the From Russia with Love stone that Bond hides under in From Russia with Love when he shoots the helicopter. It's such somebody needs to lift that stone back up.
Well, this is the plan. I think if we can get enough JBR folk there at the same time, we can, put in some strength.
Manpower.
You can pretend you're Hulk Hogan. I'll pretend I'm Hulk Warrior, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll see what we can do, and maybe we can lift it back into position. Because it is a shame, because you think something that big and that heavy, how did it kind of topple over in the first place?
Yeah.
So, we'll have to get it back somehow.
We will have to. Failing that, we can send Craig. He's up there. He can go and lift it up and sort it out.
Or Dave Bautista, he'd be up for it, wouldn't he?
He would, yeah absolutely.
He could do it.
Fellow WWF man.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice one. Good chat talking to Craig there. So for our final interview, we are going to be joined by my fellow Isle of Wight compadre, Nick Grandvoinet. This is going to be a good one. And this one, I'm just going to give you a little warning. When we get to the controversial opinion, it's going to upset people, all right? So I'm just going to put a trigger warning on you there. That it doesn't mean Nick's a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person because I agree with him. Okay? So let's just take it steady, all right? I don't want to see social media blow up.
The other point to add is they're just opinions. So
yeah. Absolutely. I'm nervous, man. I hope this goes well. All right. So without any further ado then, let's talk to Mr. Nick Grandvoinet. Fellow Isle of Wighter, Nick Grandvoinet, welcome to James Bond Radio.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chris. I'm so glad you pulled my name out the hat.
Absolutely, man. We must be related, having come from the Isle of Wight. We're probably distant or close cousins. You know what it's like on the Isle of Wight, mate. You never know.
So, whereabouts are you calling from now, Nick? Are you
Calling from actually Berkshire. I'm lucky that I've got a second home on the Isle of Wight, and I live in Berkshire. I've just taken early retirement, and I'm about to relocate permanently back to the Isle of Wight.
Which particular corner?
Well, it took. There's a famous quote from Yeats. At the end of all our exploring, we'll arrive where we started and know the place for the very first time. And that kind of sums up the Isle of Wight for me. I really had to leave it when I was 18. And I got to a point in my life as I got older where I thought, you know what, I really want to get back there. It's great countryside, you've got the beach, the sea, and it's very laid back over there. And I've never really lost touch with the place. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back there permanently.
Very nice. I was exactly the same as you. I could not wait to get off of the place when I was a teenager. But there you go. What part of the island will you be going back to?
Well, I grew up in Shanklin. I don't want to go back there, not because I don't like Shanklin, but because it would feel too bookendish to kind of go back to the place where I started. Our cottage is in St Helens, but really we'll just find the right house, and that could be anywhere. It's not a big place, Tom, you know that. So absolutely. Find the right house, and that'll be where we settle. My
granny used to live in Shanklin, God bless her, so I know Shanklin very well. There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
Right then, so this obviously is an Isle of Wight radio. This is James Bond radio, so we should start talking about James Bond before the listeners start tuning out en masse. So we got 10 quickfire questions for you, Nick. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Cool. Chris, do you want to lead the way, my old son?
I will indeed. Okay. Mr. Nick Grandvoinet, question number 1. What is your favourite James Bond film?
Well, like you guys, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I came up about 10 years ago with the idea of treating the Bond films like the Olympics. So to me, they're all on the podium because I love them all, but some are silver, some are bronze, and some are gold. And it just so happens there are 8 bronze, there are 8 silver, and there are 8 gold.
Okay. Nice.
No time did I was going to really screw that up. But generally, that's where they sit. And I find they never change between the medals. I've never had a gold become a silver or the other way around. But within the medal category, they change all the time. Having said that, there is one film that for me, probably since the age of 20, has been the, not only a gold medal film, but it's been the world record holder, the Olympic record holder. And that is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Whatever it is that we like about Bond films, and sometimes, it's difficult to know what it is. It's like why you like a painting or a piece of music. The DNA of what I like about James Bond is within On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Although, funnily enough, when I was a kid and a teenager, Thunderball was always my favourite because I always felt Sean Connery had to be Bond in my best Bond film. And I always used to say, if Connery had made On Her Majesty's Secret Service, it would have been the best. And then about the age of 20, I kind of thought, no, I've got that completely wrong. It's the best film because Connery didn't make it. I'm not sure he could have shown the vulnerability. Because Lazenby only made one, it really stands out. And actually, George Lazenby's really good at the film. I mean, the 2 key scenes, the proposal scene and the death scene, he's faultless in both those scenes. And my kind of theory is, in that film, James Bond is a bit, contradictory. On the one hand, he's a cocky, best secret agent tracking down Blofeld. And on the other hand, he's vulnerable because he falls in love. And if you think about it, George Lazenby's a really cocky bloke. He got the best part in the world through, let's face it, bullshit. And then he found himself on the biggest film set in the world, playing the lead actor. Talk about being out of your comfort zone. And I think that transfers into his performance. I think his performance in that film is brilliant, considering he's not an actor.
That's a great way of putting it. And I often wonder what we'd have got from him had he have carried on. I think by his nature, he's a very go your own way kind of guy, isn't he? So no matter what happened, I don't think we'd have ever had him for very long had he stuck around for more. We'd probably got 2 or 3 absolutely tops out of him, no more than that. But being such a sort of rough diamond to not be an actor and be able to deliver a performance as good as he did, I would love to have seen what he'd have been able to achieve with more experience and where he'd have taken Bond after that. Because
I think you're right, Tom. Although, if I'm honest, I'm happy he just made the one because that one stands out so clearly to me. And we as Bond fans play games with ourselves. I often think if someone said to me, "Look, Nick, you can watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service for the rest of your life as many times as you want, but you can't watch the other 23." or you can watch all of the other 23, but you can never watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service again. I really don't know what I'd do. There's a bit of me that kind of thinks I might say, you know what, I'll take Secret Service.
Wow.
Luckily, it's a game, but I mean, I like the film that much. I do find it very difficult to.
I'm starting to feel very anxious just at the thought of that question.
Yeah,
that is a tough one. Yeah,
that's a very good point. There, I like the fact that you've pointed out his cockiness and his vulnerability, because those are polar opposite types of a personality. You've got one, they are extremes, the vulnerable and the cockiness, and if you add into that his fighting ability, his ability in the action scenes, you've got a really well-rounded Bond there, and I think the fact that he does those scenes, I don't think many of the other Bonds could have done them anywhere as close as George. Maybe none of them could have done them as good as George. You think of that final scene, you think of when he first sees Tracy and everything like that, and he, like you said, he is flawless in them, and the proposal scene as well.
I would say, I don't want to be negative, but Timothy Dalton, for example, who's very much an actor. To me, his acting of Bond is over the top, and I much prefer the naturalistic approach from George Lazenby. The only other thing I'd say to you is, I think Casino Royale is the most perfect Bond film of them all. It's the only Bond film where I wouldn't change a single thing. I think critically, it's absolutely perfect, and it is a gold Bond for me. But the reason it's not my favourite is he's a rookie, and I like James Bond to be Britain's best. I like him when he's the best 00. That's what appeals to me. And he's clearly not in Casino Royale. He's the best card player, but he's not the best 00. And that's also why Spectre is my favourite Daniel Craig film. And I know that's not necessarily a popular choice, because it's the one Daniel Craig film where he's not a rookie and he's not over the top. He's actually cooking on gas at his very best. And I think, Spectre's his best performance.
Nick,
sorry, I'm going on a bit.
You are my boy right now. I am very pleased with the words that are coming out of your mouth, Nick. This is music to my ears, knowing what a bashing Spectre takes these days. I am very pleased to hear this. So Spectre is your favourite Daniel, did you say?
It is. I mean, and I know it's not popular to say that, but before they made Spectre, I thought, I know what I want from this film. I want him making a film where he's not a rookie, where he's not over the top, where he's doing a classic Bond, a bit of a homage to the 60s film, and he's got a bit more humour in it. And I got exactly what I wanted from Spectre. Now, I'm not saying it's a perfect film. There are some things that could change in it, but I just love that. I just love that film. There's just something about it that it just kind of clicks for me.
For me, that it's the Bond film I've wanted them to make for such a long time. That with having Blofeld back and the Spectre meeting, I've wanted that since I was
Spectre meeting is so good.
That's such a good moment.
It's a brilliant scene, but there's not a lot of love out there for Spectre. Particularly, I find in America, when you look at the American fans seem particularly not to like Spectre, but I'll loud and proud, I wave a flag for Spectre.
I'm so glad you said that, because for me, I think I absolutely worship Casino Royale. I think that is absolutely gold star Bond film, and I see what you're saying about the whole rookie aspect of it and all the rest of it. And I think Casino is as close to a perfect Bond film as you can get, alongside some others.
Yeah.
But there is, when you look at Quantum and you look at Skyfall, there's a very brooding sort of feel in Skyfall, where I'm not a big fan of the sort of brooding, sort of grumpy Bond that's a bit broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to see Bond just be, like you say, the best, just an absolute badass, fully formed.
You get the call immediately. We'll put our best man at once.
Yeah.
No, it's Bond.
Absolutely. And for me, man, that pre-title sequence in Spectre, he's got that swagger across the rooftop. It's like, that's the Bond I've been wanting to see for so long.
The word is swagger. You're right, Tom. I mean, Lazenby had swagger, and Daniel Craig got swagger in Spectre, in spades.
All right, good stuff. Question number 2 then, Nick, is what is your favourite Bond book?
Well, being older than you guys, I've read them all over my life about 3 times, but there are 4 that I go back to more than the others. Casino Royale, which I think is great, Moonraker, just love that, and Thunderball. But my overall favourite is On Her Majesty's Secret Service again. It's not like I'm obsessed by it, but I think it's interesting. it's the first book to be written after a film had come out. So he'd watched Dr. No, and he actually references, as you know, Ursula Andress within the text of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And I think that makes the film very filmatic. I think there's something he absorbed having seen Dr. No. And then you get this book that is more filmatic than the others, and the guys film it and make it even better. So I think it's a real serendipity between the books and the films with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And I just think it's a great book made into an even better film.
Yeah, it's a beauty. Yeah, that is a great book as well, that one. Yeah, for sure.
And I think if out of all the films that have stayed true to the Fleming novels, like as close as they can, there isn't like a dud amongst them. Like it's staying close to that source material is a winning formula. And obviously not many do, but the ones that do really, really hit home. You think of From Russia, you think of Majesty's, Dr. No to a certain extent as well. It's, and
even with the later films that just take the odd riff from the books, like the assassin in Kara in The Living Daylights. They're brilliant parts of those films because they're Fleming. Most of his ideas are normally spot on, aren't they?
Yeah, it's JW often says, doesn't he? He's like, when Fleming is on screen in whatever shape or form that comes in, there's just an extra feeling of specialness that comes with that.
That's
and
right.
I think that's why sort of, a lot of people would say Pierce's films suffered a little bit, is because you just didn't have any Fleming at all in there. It'd have been lovely to see him tackle some of the unused source material or maybe some reimagined material, But yeah, whenever you see a Fleming scene on screen or hear Fleming's words on screen,
you're right. You are right, Tom. I mean, Pierce Brosnan is a great James Bond. He just never got. I mean, GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies are my favourite two of his. I think he fell away quite badly with the next two. He just never got a film that was kind of worthy of his ability to play the part of Bond.
Yeah. Yeah, he needed a For Your Eyes Only after Die Another Day, didn't he? That's what he needed.
You're right.
Which rolls on nicely to question number 3 then, Nick. Now, you've mentioned pretty much every single actor to play Bond so far, but if you had to choose one, who would be your favourite?
Well, it's easy. It's Sean Connery for me. And when we did the Diamonds Are Forever podcast, I rang into that and I said, just imagine it for me. You got all 5 Bonds, or how many Bonds have got now? 7 Bonds in a room, and it's last man standing. It would come down to Daniel and Sean at the very end, I think. And I think at the end of the day, Sean would just nab it because he's got everything. He's got the physique, he's got the looks, he's got the humour, he's got the charisma, he's got the gravitas. It's a pity now that because of the attitude to women that was in his films, because of when they were made, it takes a little something away, perhaps. Particularly for a modern audience, but to me, he's the best Bond, followed pretty closely by Daniel Craig, because I think Daniel Craig's brought a new dimension to Bond, like a third dimension to Bond, by making him a more real character. I mean, we didn't want a backstory to Bond in Thunderball or Diamonds Are Forever or Spy Love Me, or even, GoldenEye. But by doing that, it gives a little bit more. But I don't think you can beat Connery. But I think what Daniel Craig and Sean Connery have in common is they were both cast against type. I mean, they're kind of working class boys who are cast to be Etonian commanders. And it worked. It takes the class factor away. And Terence Young isn't one of my favourite Bond directors, if I'm honest, but I think we owe him a big debt because he got it right in Dr. No with the way he had Connery play Bond. If they'd made Bond too posh, too public schoolish, it wouldn't have translated internationally, and I don't think it would have been successful. So, hats off to Terence Young for getting that absolutely kind of spot on.
Yeah, man. I think there's just like a real animal magnetism to Sean in those early films, isn't there? Like like we often say, I think it's encapsulated in that moment with Miss Taro when he's got the towel wrapped in his fists like that, and when he walks towards her, he could quite easily choke her out with that towel and murder her right there, or kiss her, and you don't quite know. And I think that's the intriguing thing of what he did on screen with that, and like you say, if he'd have been like a really plummy British upperclassman, that would not have gone over well in America, because that's so easily mocked, isn't it? That kind of portrayal,
It doesn't translate, and it turns people off. And I watched Dr. No recently, and I think it's a very underestimated Bond film. But that bit where he shoots Professor Dent in the back in cold blood, I mean, it's very un-British. It's it's pretty shocking. Even then, I guess, even now. So it must be more so in the 60s.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, a real sense of danger to the guy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
big time. So, question number 4 then: who is your favourite Bond girl?
Well, I know you guys like to have two, but the one you'd like to marry, the one you'd like to go to bed with. For me, I've got to like the personality as well as the looks.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you what I mean. It brings it to life.
Oh, okay.
Really? I've not considered that before.
I like the personality as well as the way they look. So you look at someone like Tanya Roberts, God bless her soul.
Yeah.
Attractive woman, pretty good actress. But the Stacey Sutton character, I mean, my God, I think Roger Moore should have thrown her off the Golden Gate Bridge and ended up in the shower with Zorin at the end.
Imagine that as a
much more satisfying ending to that film. That's no disrespect to her, but you know what I mean. So for me, I like the strong Bond girls. So I like Carrie Lowell in License to Kill, Isabella Scorupco in GoldenEye, obviously Diana Rigg, Secret Service. But my favourite is actually Leah Sado, Madeleine Swan. I just find her really attractive. She reminds me of my wife when she was that age. I'm not just saying that, but she does.
Okay.
And I think her character is really interesting. She's intelligent, and she's clearly also a bit flawed because her dad was an assassin. And I do buy the line, Inspector, that she's the only woman that can understand Bond because she was a daughter of an assassin. Mm-hmm. I just think she's brilliant. And I'm so pleased that she's going to be, the first proper Bond girl to films.
Chris.
You never know, Chris. Well, I think
he's all right. He's back. He's got his earphones on again.
You can edit that bit out.
We have to be very, very careful with our Chris because he's avoiding absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So
sorry, almost. But I think she's gorgeous, and I think her character's great, and she's my favourite.
And that's good because no one has said Leia Sadu before, have they, Tom?
No,
favourite Bond girls. That's brilliant.
She's obviously a new one,
Madeleine
but
Swan.
what I really do like about Madeleine is I do like your reactions there, Chris. You were very quick off the mark to get the.
I have to be these days, Tom. I have to be.
It reminds me of the night we met, man, when the Quantum preview came on. Anyway, is the scene on the train where he's showing her how to use a gun, and she snatches it out of his hand and can do it with her eyes closed. When she talks about Daddy used to keep a gun under the sink next to the bleach and all that kind of stuff. I do love that sort of. There's a story there that obviously we haven't explored, but it gets the imagination going, doesn't it? To think of what it must have been like for her growing up as Mr. White's daughter. Yeah. And there's definitely an interest.
Know more about that. Who knows, Chris? That's not a spoiler, but who knows?
Yeah, that's true.
There we go. Good choice.
Yep. Okay, on to question 5 then, Nick. Who would you say is your favourite Bond villain?
I would say generically Blofeld, because he is the overall kind of nemesis for Bond. And I do find it difficult to pin down as to which one. I have to say I like all the Blofelds. I like Donald Pleasance because like that film, it's a visual film. It's like pop art Bond, isn't it? Twice, and he's perfect for that film with the scar and everything. I like Telly Savalas because he's perfect for Secret Service. He's got that vanity. He's a bit more thuggish. He can scheme. Perfect for that film. I love Diamonds Are Forever. I know it's not a popular thing to say, but that was the first Bond film I saw. And I like Charles Gray. I think he's perfect for that Bond film. And actually, I know that what's his name in
Christoph Waltz.
Got a hard time. But actually, I enjoy him in Spectre. I just like that character. So I would have to say Blofeld. But if you ask me to have a single actor, I think probably Silver in Skyfall. He is brilliant. And I think Michael Lonsdale in Moonraker. And again, I think Moonraker is an underestimated film. If you want to have a fun time at the cinema, it's all up there on the screen. I think Michael Lonsdale is kind of brilliant in Moonraker. So I guess Blofeld, Silver, Michael Lonsdale. And, it's difficult to pin it down to one. I do think Daniel Craig and Sean Connery, what they have in common is they both have, I think, the best Bond villains of the series. I don't know if it's because they're the two best actors in the role, in my opinion, but I do think that they've had really good villains. A match for them as the actor in the role.
Absolutely. Just to wave the Spectre flag a little bit more, I really love that meteor room scine where
I love it. When it comes out of the shadows.
Just drenched in darkness, and then way he
touch
looms,
it if you want.
that was beautiful. The way he looms out of the darkness, it's so like it is what Blofeld is, the man who stays in the shadows and is pulling the strings of everybody else. And just the way he looms out of that darkness is absolutely brilliant, man. I adore that scene. It's great.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think overall, as I say, I love the film. I think if something goes wrong with his performance, it's probably in that torture scene. First, he's got no bloody socks on. That takes away some of the menace. I don't know why. But there's something in that scene. Maybe it's when he reveals he's the brother or whatever. There's something there that takes away the menace that you see in the boardroom, that you see in the meteor scene. Yeah. By the end of the film, he hasn't got the amount of menace that he had at the beginning. Something slightly unravels, which is a pity. But I still think overall it's a great performance.
So let's flog the dead horse for a moment. And as a Spectre lover, how do you deal with the stepbrother plot thing? How does that make you feel?
I'm okay with it. I mean, I think on balance, I'd rather they hadn't done that, but I think it's okay. I think people get a bit obsessed by it. It's okay. I mean, it's all right.
I think for me, I think had they actually have made them blood brothers, actual brothers, I'd have hated that. And there's no getting away from it. But I think the word brother gets overblown so much with it. And
didn't he just stay for like a few months one summer?
That's it. As soon as Blofeld says, treat him like a brother, everybody went off the deep end saying that they're brothers, which of course they're not. They never were. And that was not even a thing. But for some reason, people have fixated on that as a thing, and it's not. They were acquaintances or childhood friends, and it's like I do agree that it's ham-fisted and they shouldn't have done it. I think it's just a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Trying to make it more of an emotional connection in a bit of a clumsy way, and I just think it would be better off without it. But by the same token, it's nowhere near as bad as I think most people make out.
No, not at all. I mean, to me, it doesn't detract from the film. Not at all. It doesn't.
Cool. Question number 6 then, Nick, is what is your favourite Bond theme song?
Wow. Yeah. That's a new one, isn't it? Have you asked that before? I think for me it comes down to two. You only live twice or nobody does it better. And I think probably I would go for You Only Live Twice, because I just think it's such a wonderful piece of music. Lyrically, I think the soundtrack to that film is fantastic. My phone ringtone is actually on an Ashley Secret Service, which I think is a fantastic theme song.
Nice.
But I think you've got to choose one that's got lyrics and a singer. So I think I'd go You Only Live Twice.
What opening strings as well. Beautiful song. Beautiful song.
Yeah, and even later in the film where they have the instrumental and they're going out fishing in the morning, it's a beautiful piece of music. Yeah,
that string line, I've said it before, is so genius. We almost don't deserve it as humans. It's too good. It's too beautiful. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just otherworldly genius, that, and it's you can't knock it. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, then on to question 007, Nick. You can have two answers for this. It is, what is your favourite Bond location? And this can be one that you visited and one that you'd like to see that you haven't yet seen before.
Well, that's an easy one. It's Pitt's Gloria, of course. When I was 50, my wife took me there with our two daughters for my birthday. And this was before they'd redeveloped it in the way they have. And I guess it looked more like the film then. I mean, it looks great now, but I mean, it had none of the stand-up kind of plastic
007 all over it. Yeah.
Set. And it was just fantastic. I mean, we spent a couple of days there, so we went to Loughton and we went to Murren, and we had a really good look around. And none of those locations have really changed at all, in 50 years. And we had lunch up there, and it was February, so it was covered in snow. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, it was one of the best days of my life, I have to say. Absolutely fantastic.
You've obviously got yourself a good woman then, if that's your 50th birthday present.
Well, she She tolerates it. Let me tolerates it. We went to the Living Daylights premiere together
Nice.
way back before we got married, and that was fun. Very hot night at the Open Leicester Square, but that was good fun. So she's done a few things like that to show her commitment to me, I guess. But it's not often we watch a Bond film together. Let me put it that way. But she's pretty good. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good on Mrs. Grandvoinet. Question number 8 then. This is a new one for you. What is your favourite pre-title sequence?
Yeah. Now that's a tough one, isn't it? Because there have been some absolute crackers. I think, let me just kind of reflect on this. I love The Living Daylights. I think The Living Daylights is a fantastic introduction to a new Bond. I actually love Moonraker because I just think the stunt of being pushed out of the plane is just mind-boggling. And don't forget, when I grew up on the Isle of Wight, my dad ran all the cinemas, so I got to see all of these films at the cinemas loads of times. So I kind of lived and breathed it on the big screen. So when you see Moonraker when he's falling out of that plane without a parachute in the stalls of the cinema, and you're 15 feet away from the screen, you're absolutely, in it.
Isn't that like every kid's dream to have a dad that owns a cinema so you can just like watch all the Bonds?
No, it was, Chris. I tell you what, I could take my friends to the cinema for nothing. I could get all the posters and swap them at school. And this is a sad tale. I swapped the original Dr. No from Russia with Love, Goldfinger and Thunderball for Cars when I was about 10. You know what they're worth now. I mean, my God. And, luckily, I've still got them all from Secret Service up to the present day. But I mean, to have lost those first 4 in particular, that's a lot of money. Yeah. So no, it was great. I used to go in the cinema when it was shut and play my 45s and play my LPs with friends and use a whole sound system. So no, it was like the film Cinema Paradiso. It was such a great privilege to be able to do that. But going back to your question, I think probably it's The Spy Who Loved Me, because it sets up the mystery of what's happening to these submarines. You then get Airmen saying, right, we'll put our best man on it. And then you've got him skiing off the mountain with a Union Jack parachute. And then you've got one of the best theme songs of the entire series. And I think Maurice Binder's, credits for that film are absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, I think it's A Spy Who Loved Me.
And it has that key ingredient that you like, which is M saying, I'm going to get my best man on the job. And that's it. There he is.
Yeah. Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker are strong silver bonds for me, definitely.
Yeah, right, interesting. Nice. Okay, so we've got another new question here, which will be an interesting one. Question number 9, Nick. What is your most controversial or unpopular opinion as a Bond fan?
That I don't like Timothy Dalton. I don't think Timothy Dalton should have been cast as James Bond. I remember in the mid-'80s, having watched Octopussy, which I know you love, Chris, thinking, I like the film, but Roger Moore's too old. Who's going to take over from Roger Moore? And it wasn't clear, who it would be. And then I remember watching Remington Steele, and I'd never seen Pierce Brosnan before. And I watched it, and I thought, oh my God, this guy was born to play James Bond. He has to be the next Bond. And of course, everybody, took that view because it was so evident the guy was just born to play Bond. And then, of course, he didn't get it. And in came Timothy Dalton. And Tim Dalton, for me, was always kind of second best. And he's a theatrical actor. And he tends to exaggerate things, in my view. And that makes, to me, his performance as Bond come across as a bit, I hate to say it, hammish, a bit over the top, a bit hammy. And for me, James Bond has to be cool. I need to look at Bond and think, I want to be him in that film. And I just don't get that with Timothy Dalton. I mean, Living Daylights is a great film. I don't like License to Kill. It's the bronze film for me, and down the bottom, if I'm honest. But Living Daylights is a good film. I think if Pierce Brosnan had made it, it would have been very near the top of the tree for me. So my controversial thing, I guess, because I know so many people in fandom love Timothy Dalton and feel his films are underrated, I just think he wasn't right for the part, if I'm really honest.
Tommy's smiling there, aren't you, Tom?
Yeah, I've got to be careful, man. But I don't know whether it's our Isle of Wight heritage coming through, but we come from a similar thing with that. I loved him, right? I love him, and I will defend him to the ends of the earth. But I am in agreement with you there, man. As much as a significant portion of our listeners are throwing their earbuds out in rage right now.
Sorry, guys, for doing
it's. I feel exactly the same. I just feel like I love what he did with his two films, but I think that was Pierce, man. And I think if Pierce had done Daylights, I think it would like you say, elevate
right
it.
up the top.
And I understand the love for Timmy and all the rest of it. I think what Timmy didn't do for me is exactly what you just said, which is I don't want to beat him. You know, I like watching his films and I enjoy them, but I don't want to beat him.
Yeah.
And everything I see in Daylights, I can imagine what Pierce would have done with that. And I think that would have been the amount of respect that Tim gets. I feel like Pierce would get that respect had he have done Daylights. And I know Dobson at home is probably just screaming at me through his earbuds, as is Dan Gale and many other listeners as well. And I totally get it. And I respect your love for Tim, but it's how I feel, man.
Film, wouldn't it? It would have been his Spy Love Me. It would have been his, I don't know, Thunderball, Goldfinger, whatever you want to call it. It would have been. But alas, it wasn't.
Yeah, and that would have been a perfect opportunity for Pierce to do some Fleming material. You know, it really would have been.
Yeah, and he would have made 5 films. Or 5 films? We've done that. 6 films. Yeah, it's if there's one thing I could correct in the lineage of the Bond films, it would have been to have them not renew the bloody Remington Steel contract. You know, and have him slip into the role.
These what ifs, eh?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. 2020 hindsight and all that. You know.
Absolutely. All right, then. Last question for you, Nick, is what is your favourite scene in the entire series?
Well, this will be controversial, I think, because I think the 2 most controversial things about how I view the Bond films is that I love Spectre. It's a top 5 one for me, and also so is Diamonds Are Forever. And I have to say to you, firstly, it's probably subjective because it's the first one I saw, but also, when that film came out, I remember at our cinema on the Isle of Wight, they were queuing around the block. And this was in December. And I said to my dad, what's it all about? You didn't see that. And he said, it's because people are so pleased that proper James Bond is back. And, people love Sean Connery. And my dad never liked On Her Majesty's Secret Service because it didn't take as much money as the others. And of course, it's out in the cinema. So it's purely a commercial decision. It wasn't anything about the artistic merit of Secret Service. And when Diamonds Are Forever came out, it felt so uber modern. America back in those days was like 10 years ahead of the UK because it was mainly set in America. You felt that modernness, and I just loved the film. And I remember one critic described it as a comic book for adults, and I think that's exactly what it is. It's quite violent, it's quite sexy, but it's also got Blofeld's guards on oil wearing bright blue boiler suits. So it's a real comic book of a film. But I do think it's got the wittiest dialogue. I'm coming to the point. I do think it's got the wittiest dialogue of the entire series. I think Tom Mankiewicz did a fantastic job. Provided the collars and cuffs match, elementary Dr. Leiter. It's brilliant dialogue. You can see Sean Connery enjoys it when he says it. So my favourite scene is the end of that film, because you've got Tiffany Case, who I think is about to say to him, James, there's something very important I want to ask you. She's about to ask him, will he marry her? I know the girl's not supposed to ask, but I can't help it. And then in come Wheaton Kid, and we know you had the smashed perfume bottle, so that's unfinished business. And Connery's sitting there, cool as a cucumber, ordering the Mouton Rothschild, whatever it is, and smelling the cork. And I just think it really sums up James Bond perfectly. He's in danger, clearly. There's 2 henchmen there. He knows they're the bad guys, and he just he's like cast fishing. He puts out the question, although for such a grand meal, I'd rather expect a claret. And then he reels them in. And then he, basically kicks the crap out of them. And then, he says to her, because she's seen all that violence, so what you're about to ask me. And she kind of thinks, Jesus, I don't want to marry that guy. She says, how the hell do we get the diamonds now? I just think that whole scene is brilliant because it's humorous, it's witty, and there's an element of danger, and Bond is cool as a cucumber. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he just reels those guys in. I just love that scene.
That's fantastic. We've not heard that at all, have we, Tom? No, I've never heard that scene. That's brilliant. I love it, Nick. That's fantastic.
That's a great one. It's nice when you get one that's not a typical typical choice for a lot of people. That's a beauty. I love diamonds as well, man. I think it's one of those, isn't it, where there's a lot of complaints because obviously the production value of certain things in diamonds isn't tip top, is it? You know, there's some certain things that don't look that great, and it can look a little bit rough around the edges in places. But man, as a movie, it's so much fun, isn't it? You know, it really is a fun one to watch. And
I tend to watch it. I tend to watch it quite a lot. Probably of all the Sean Connerys, it's the one I go back to the most. Probably because it reminds me of being an 8-year-old again. But I do find it very witty. It just it chugs along really nicely.
Yeah. Dialogue is sparkling in that, isn't it? Like
there's so dialogue in the modern films. I think the modern films, some of their plots are better, etc. But some of the dialogue can be really bad.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this chat. We have some very, very similar opinions, and I'm very pleased to hear it, and especially a fellow Spectre flag waver like me. It's lovely to hear. So when you're settled on the Isle of Wight, man, and I go down to visit my old man, we'll have to meet up for a cup of tea and a Bond chat.
Yeah, let me know, and and thanks for such a great show, guys, and good luck with the next 7 years. I just hope you get more than one film during this.
Let's hope so.
With a bit of luck, we will, won't we? So,
fingers crossed.
So looking forward to you being back in action, and as I say, keeping it going. I know it must be a lot of work and a lot of commitment, but believe me, it's worth it. We really love it. I mean, it's a show. So keep up the good work.
Thanks. That's very kind of you. Cheers, Nick. And just out of interest, what is the situation with your dad's ex-cinema now? Is it still running films, or has it changed?
Sadly, it's demolished. Yeah, it was my granddad. So my granddad built the Regal Cinema in Shank in 1932. It's a beautiful Art Deco cinema. It got a lot of rave reviews, and it was opened in like cinema architecture magazines. When my granddad retired in the mid-60s, my dad took over running that cinema and most of the other cinemas on the Isle of Wight. A company called Star Group ran them all, and he did that until he retired. But the cinema, it was shut in 1987, and unfortunately demolished. We sold it in the end for a song because it became a money pit. The roof started to fall in and stuff, so we just had to get rid of it basically. And now it's flats, but as Tom knows, the front door that they use on the flats are the original Art Deco doors from the cinema. So there's at least that there. But I mean, I had some great memories of that cinema. And when You Only Live Twice came out and I was 4.5, my dad had Ken Wallace fly Nelly to Shankton for the carnival. My dad towed little Nelly in the carnival procession.
Wow.
And I was allowed to have my photo taken next to little Nelly. In fact, my mother wanted me to sit in little Nelly to have my photo taken, but I was terrified at 4.5 it would take off. So I could have sat in little Nelly and had my photo taken, but as it is, it's a picture of me just standing next to little Nelly. So that was really my first intro in Bond, because I never forgot that. And they let me go to the cinema at a matinee to see the little Nelly sequence, just so I could connect the two. But I mean, it was just, as I said, it was such great fun having a dad that kind of ran the cinemas, and the little Nelly bit was just fantastic.
Do you still have that photo of you?
I do. Yeah, I do have it.
You'll have to share it with us on Facebook.
Definitely, yeah.
I need to dig it out. But I just wish I'd been sitting in the helicopter. As I said, 4.5, as far as I was concerned, it's going to take off.
Yeah, of course. Nicely done. All right then, Nick. Well, that was a thoroughly enjoyable conversation, man. And hopefully we can do it again sometime when I'm down on the Isle of Wight and you're settled down there, and we can slag off Timothy Dalton and talk about Pierce.
About Spectre, yeah. That'd be great. Thanks, guys.
That's a joke to everybody, Tim, who loved Tim at home. I'm just don't worry. Don't be
joking.
All right, guys. Take care.
Take care. Cheers, Nick.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Right. As everybody's switched off now, I know there's going to be a lot of listeners who've thrown their earbuds out in absolute disgust. They're calling me all sorts of names. God knows what they're calling Nick. But what do you think, Chris? Are we wrong? Are we out of order? What do you think?
Well, you're not wrong, because there isn't a right or wrong. It's everyone each to their own opinion.
Every man
it's
for
subjective.
himself.
And if someone tells you you're wrong, then they're just being an idiot. But the way that you were saying it, it's easy to see why certain people can think a certain way, but it doesn't mean that you have to think that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also what I like, obviously we talk about these listener episodes when you meet a kindred spirit in terms of people that think like you do in terms of favorite film or characters or whatever. That tends to happen for certain films or certain characters a lot. So it'll be a widespread similar opinion. But when you meet someone that shares the same sort of opinion, which might not be as widespread, then I find that almost that little bit extra special. Do you know what I mean? Just so
absolutely.
There's that sort of closer tie. But in all honesty, you know, I really enjoyed. I thought Nick was great to interview, and I think go for it. Why not? You know, that's to be honest, I'm not too dissimilar to you. I'm maybe not quite as strongly, but I'm not too dissimilar, and I can see, you know, see the reasoning behind it.
Like I always say, I still love him, man. I still love the dude. I love what he did with it, you know, and with Daylights and License and all the rest of it. I still love him. But like I've said from day one, Tim does rank as my least favourite out of the lot of them. You know what I mean? So it just is what it is. But I know Dan Gale's
he's fuming.
Me out.
Brian's throwing his whiskey glass across the room.
He certainly is. It's going to be a disaster. But there we go. So it's been a lot of fun, man. Thanks to Craig and Nick for joining us today. Lots of fun, lots of good chat, and thanks to all the other boys that have joined us. We've had Alan J. Porter and Jill Porter. We had Matt Wood, Stephen Sanchez, Alex Robson, Brendan Lowe, Mike Kerwin, Terence Lehue, and of course Craig Laurenson and Nick Grandvoinet today joining us on the birthday episodes. So it was an honour to have you, and it was a lot of good fun.
Great mix of people as well. Like every one of them brought a lot to the table, didn't they, with their interviews and stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, really enjoyed these last few episodes. So
big time, man.
Looking forward to JW's as well with the Musical Bond interviews next week.
That's right. JW is going to be joined by 3 intrepid listeners to talk the Musical Bond. So they're always a lot of fun too. So you can look forward to that next week. So until then, JBR will return. Until then, I've been Tom Sears.
Well, I think we're finishing a little bit early, aren't we?
Oh, fuck.
Got to do.
Yeah.
You know what time it is, don't you,
Shit.
Tom?
I did not know what the time was, did I? Good God, what an absolute disaster. All right, it is obviously time for...
Who wrote the score for Live and Let Die? Who played Helga Brandt and how did she die? Who wants to stockpile the water in Bolivia? It's Tommy Trivia.
That's right, it's time for Tommy Trivia. Chris is going to whip out his massive Trivial Pursuit 007 deck and
it is
waft
massive.
it in front of my eyes. And then maybe just slap me on the forehead a little bit, maybe a couple of times on each cheek, and then read what's on
see
it.
what happens. Okay, this time I'm going to choose what we're going to start, and we're going to go for locations.
Okay.
To start with.
All right.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, man.
Mr. Tom Sears, what country is Q's Field Lab in?
Q's Field Lab.
Yes. Do you need more? Or are you going to have
There's a lot of opportunities there, isn't there? Because it could be Spy, it could be Moonraker, it could be all sorts of them. So yeah, give me something else.
Okay, I'll give you a clue. You just mentioned the film. But which one is it? 50-50.
I'm going to say Moonraker.
And so what's the answer to the question?
What was the question again? In what film is... In what country?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hold on a minute. That would be Brazil, wouldn't it?
It would indeed, yeah. So I took you on a little tangent there, Tom. I hope you don't mind, but that was good fun.
Mate. Yeah, it was good.
Okay, on to crew and behind the scenes. Who was the editor who went on to direct 5 later Bond films?
That would be John Glen.
It would indeed.
JBR
Excellent
guest
stuff.
John Glen, I hasten to add.
Can you guess what film is that he was an editor of?
An editor, it would be Majesty's.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, on to casting characters, Tom. You are three to the good. Oh, no, you're 2 to the good. Sorry, 2 to the good. What role does Jill St. John play in Diamonds Are Forever?
That would be Tiffany Case.
Yes, it would indeed, Miss Tiffany Case. Okay, on to the films. Octopussy Circus is a cover for smuggling what into the West?
Diamonds.
Not. Can you expand on that a bit, please?
Oh shit! It's been a while since I've seen Octopussy. Weapons, is it?
No, you are on the right track with the first one, but it's not sort
Jewels.
Yeah, I'll give you jewels. It's sort of Soviet treasures or Soviet jewels. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll give you that one.
Cool.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, 2 more to go. We're on to Dr. No for vehicles. What happens to Honey Rider's boat?
It gets smashed up a bit, doesn't it? It gets like shot and broken.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, it gets shot by Dr. No's henchman.
Yeah.
So you're doing well. Very, very well.
Thanks, man.
Last question. Okay.
Yeah.
Last question. It is gadgets.
Okay.
The question is referring to the film Quantum of Solace.
Okay.
The question is, Mr. Tom says, what watch does James Bond wear in Quantum of Solace?
See, I need to wait for part 2 of the Watches of Bond, don't I?
It will
get
be
that.
covering this exact.
A Omega Seamaster?
An Omega Seamaster indeed.
Oh,
Well done.
nice.
Yeah.
All right,
Lovely. Good old Omega Seamaster. He loves a bit of Omega, doesn't he?
He does, doesn't he?
So there we go. 6 out of 6.
I
I
did well,
am
man.
flabbergasted.
The question is, though, Chris, how prepared are you? Because it is time for Bond Busters. That's obviously where we take the James Bond lexicon. If you haven't got a copy of that, you know what you need to do. It's available on Amazon. Chris is going to give me a letter. I'm going to flip to one of those letters and pose him a question related to that letter. For example, if Chris said, I'll have a B, please, Tom, I would say, what B is Agent 007? And Chris would say that would be Bond, James Bond, and so on and so forth.
Hopefully.
All right? So that's how it
Yep.
works. So, Chris, what's going to be your first letter of the day, please?
My first letter of the day, Tom, is the letter A.
Letter A, keeping it simple. I like that. All right. Okay, here we go. A, let me see. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay. Chris Wright, what A is the model of car Bond stole so that he could race to the US Air Force Base at Feldstadt to warn them of a hidden atomic bomb?
Ooh. Now, let me see. That would be an Alfa Romeo GTV6.
You unbelievable machine of a human being. That's absolutely right. Well done. I wouldn't have got that in a million years. And you even got the letters and the number on the end and everything. Do you know what the license plate is?
Oh,
Just
a German one? No, I can't remember. Sorry.
That is correct. It would be BT F608, Chris. You can add that to the memory banks.
There we go.
Incredible performance. Well done. Give me your next letter, please.
The next letter for you is O, please. Tom, could I have an O?
O, okay. O for Octopussy. Let's have a little
Don't
look.
say that. It might be the answer.
All right, that's true. Okay. Okay. Let's go. Chris Wright.
Yes.
What O is the church in St. Petersburg where Boris Grishenko arranged to meet Natalia Semyonova after she escaped from the destruction of Severnaya?
Oh. The Church of something like Omsk, but I don't think it is.
There's definitely a sk involved. You're right.
What's that, sorry?
There's definitely a sk involved.
Involved, yeah. Ah, the Church of... Oh, no, it's one of those things where you tell me I'm going to be gutted. Church of...
Time's ticking.
Sorry, man. Go on, give it to me. I'm going to weep at this one.
It is, of course, Our Lady of Smolensk.
Ah, Smolensk. Yes.
Smolensk. So you were there. You had the little rumbles of it. Cool.
Yeah.
Give me your third and final letter of the week, please.
Okay, my last letter of the week is going to be Q.
Q. Okay. Let's have a little look at that. Okay. Oh, that's too easy, that one. Hold on.
Is it who is the gadget master of Bond?
It wasn't that one, but it was going to be who helps Bond out on a boat in Doctor No. Okay, let's have...
I don't know that one.
That is. Okay. Hold on. Let's have a little look at this. Ooh. Okay.
I'm not sure I'm as fond as being on the other side of the questions.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Chris Wright.
Yeah.
What Q is the name of M's private country house and estate located on the edge of the Windsor Forest on Crown lands?
That, I believe, is the same name in both novel and the film, which
that is correct.
I think is Quarterdeck.
Well done, my friend. Spot on the money. Quarterdeck indeed. Excellent. Good stuff. This week's questions obviously taken from the James Bond lexicon, so make sure you go and get a copy of that because, dude, the detail, I've said it before, the detail is incredible. All the continuation novels and God knows what else is crammed in there. I can't believe they actually managed to finish that book. I think it ultimately was a decade's worth of work condensed into the 6 years or whatever it was they put into it. Good Lord.
I think something else might be worth pointing out. Obviously, as you're looking through for these questions, you're not checking on a physical hard copy of the book, are you?
No.
You're doing it through, is that through their website or through a PDF that you can...
No, it's through a PDF, a digital version that they sent before the interview. So I'm using it as my little weekly tool. I hope they don't mind.
That's a good little...
So there we go. So convenient. Nice. But there you go. Go and get yourself a copy if you haven't yet because you need one. Enough said.
Indeed. And then they can join me at home with the question and answer session of Bond.
Indeed. Absolutely. Good stuff. All right then, Chris. I think that about wraps it up for this week, doesn't it? So
it does indeed, yeah.
JBR will return next week with JW with the music of Bond, talking to 3 intrepid listeners, talking about music and Bond. So that'll be next week for everybody to look forward to. Until then, I've been Tom Sears.
And I've been Chris Wright.
And James Bond Radio will return, everybody. We will see you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.